Hello all, I made a trading card game. What is a trading card game? A trading card game is a card game where you collect cards and build your own deck to play against other people's homemade decks. You could trade cards that you got with friends for other cards, which I guess is where the trading part of trading card game comes from. Although in my 2010s American education, I don't know if I ever saw kids actually trading, more so just showing off their fancy cards. Granted, I wasn't really immersed in the culture at the time, so maybe it was happening and I just didn't know. Anyway, the bottom line is that it just means you get to pick out what you want to play with. There is no correct cards. Part 2. Why would you want to pick Star Pawns? After all, it's not the oldest or biggest. But I think there are 3 things that make Star Pawns stand out. The biggest thing you will have noticed if you were looking at your screen is that Star Pawns has a board. And pawns. Yes, instead of draining your opponent's health to win, instead it's more like Candyland and Bed Wars combined, and the game creator just kept saying yes to everything suggested to him. Foreshadowing is a narrative device in which suggestions or warnings about events to come are dropped or planted. Second, there is by default no cost to play cards. There is no real resource to manage, not even a space on a card allocated to it. No having insufficient mana or waiting for elixir, no wrong energy colors, no need to tribute monsters just to play a strong card, almost always nothing. I think I counted 3 cards that you could argue have a cost to play. 2 that kill your pawns, which isn't that bad, they respawn, and 1 that removes some of your cards from the game. But Jaden, you ask, if there is no cost to play anything, what's stopping someone from playing their whole hand in one turn? And it's simple, hypothetical viewer. There are limits on how many cards you can play per turn. By default, on your turn, you can play 1 basic movement per pawn you have, 1 non-basic movement card, and 1 special card. That's generally a limit of 6 cards per turn, but on average it's more often like 3. That is assuming you don't use one of the countless ways to get around the limit, including but not limited to bonus play, level 12, cards that don't count towards the cap, playing on other people's turns, you're only limited on your turn by the way, and activating most card abilities is also free. But Jaden, you ask again, 6 cards is still a lot. It seems like players would quickly run out of cards in their hand, and I was getting to that hypothetical viewer. The answer is also simple. Reason 3. At the start of your turn, you draw multiple cards. At the beginning of each of your turns, you draw all the way up to your maximum hand size. It starts at 6, but quickly goes up to 7 when you get your first level. This means that if your hand is empty at the start of your turn, you could plausibly draw 10 cards at the start of your turn. The flip side of this is that if you'd start your turn already at or above your maximum hand size, you don't draw any cards. Also, side note, because you by default draw so many cards, card draw abilities are fairly weak compared to other TCGs, and actually discarding becomes pretty strong. Not only is discarding stronger than in other TCGs, in my early testing it has felt fairly necessary to have a way to discard. Either that or I haven't mastered deck building yet. I don't know. But Jaden, you ask, snapping me out of the trance-like grip of dump. With how many cards you're drawing, how do you keep your deck from emptying in like 15 turns? And that's the neat part, you don't. Because having an empty draw pile doesn't make you lose the game. You just reshuffle your discard pile and keep going. Asterisk. In my early testing, it was rare for a player's deck to run out. As long as you don't do something that makes you draw tons of cards, it's unlikely to happen. Foreshadowing is a narrative device in which suggestions or warnings. But Jaden, I hear you say for the less narratively convenient time. I say silence, viewer. You are getting an overview. This is only going to be an overview broadly of how the game works. I will be releasing a more in-depth video in a few days. Please note that the game is not out yet, things are subject to change. That being said, there are 2 main ways to win. Be the last player with pawns standing, normally by killing everyone else's pawns, or reach level 16, you get levels for killing opponents' pawns. There are actually more ways to lose than win. As briefly implied way back on slide 8, your pawns normally respawn if killed. This is only true until you lose your flag. If you lose your flag, you just switch to hardcore mode. You can still win, but it's much harder. If you run out of cards in your draw and discard pile, you lose the game. If somehow your maximum hand size is 0 or less, you lose the game. Or, of course, if you resign, then you've lost the game. and also you, listener, have just lost the game. The board is a 24-square ring, with 4 offshoots for up to 4 players to play, with 4 pawns each. Players' spawn points are on the main ring, and their flag is in the back of their base. How to read a Star Pawns card. If you have played a TCG before, the layout should be pretty familiar. Name on the top left, release set in the top middle, a star icon or outline in the top right corner, a revision number just below the name, the card art, the card's type and location, the rules text, the artist and the person who came up with the idea in the bottom left, copyright in the bottom middle, and value in battle in the bottom right. First, what's with the star in the corner? That's what tells you if it's a star card or not. Cryptic, I know. But seriously, it just tends to be stronger cards, and some cards that let you search or target things exclude them. When you are building your deck, you are limited to 2 copies of star cards and 5 copies of non-star cards. The main distinction for the type of card is if it's a movement or a special card. Movement cards tend to move pawns, and special cards tend to not. Amongst the movement cards, there is also the distinction between basic and non-basic. Basic are just the numbers 0 to 5, and have higher limits on how many copies you can have. Non-basic is everything else. The card location tells you how the card acts when it is played. Currently there are 3 locations, but there are plans for a couple more in the future. Immediate means it does its thing and goes away right after. Permanents go face up in front of you, and its rules keep applying until something gets rid of it. Board cards are the ones most unique to star pawns. You play them on the square one of your pawns are on, most do stuff when you land on them. You also can't put board cards on starting squares or flag squares. We have now seen the 3 attributes that define how a card functions and interacts. This gives us 14 possible card types, only 14 and not 18 because all basic movement cards are immediates. Remember that those are just the cards that are a number. To start setting up the game, each player picks a color of pawns, or other figurines if you brought your own, whatever fits on the squares. Each player puts their pawns on a starting square, and put a flag token or figurine on their flag square. Roll your d20 to see who goes first. Highest goes first, clockwise from there. This is approximately the layout of your cards. Permanents go face up in front of you. Beside that, a level tracker and your d20, you start at level 0. And beside that, your draw and discard piles. All players draw to 6 at the beginning of the game. While it is hard to do anyway, flags cannot be captured on turn 1. Every player gets a turn before flags become capturable. Your turn consists of 3 parts. Draw to your maximum hand size, play cards, pass. In your card playing phase, you can play cards in any order you want. Like you're not forced to play your movements first and then your special. You can even choose to play nothing if you don't want to. You could just draw your cards and pass. I have mentioned killing opponents' pawns a few times without describing how it works. When one of your pawns lands on an opponent's pawn, you enter a battle. Both players turn a card face up, starting with the player that started the battle. The highest number in the bottom right wins. If there's a tie, draw again. After the battle, the cards are discarded. The losing pawn dies and the winning pawn stays. The winning player levels up because they got a kill. Some cards have an X in the corner. That just means that its value in battle varies, and it will say how to find X on the card. Levels give powerful permanent buffs every 4 levels. You start at level 0 and win the game at level 16. Every 4 levels you gain a new ability. At level 1 you get +1 hand size. At level 4 you can split basic movement between pawns. Like say you played a 4 and split it 3 and 1 between 2 of your pawns. At level 8 it ramps up. You get a permanent +1 in battles. And the last buff before you win, at level 12, you can play an additional movement or special card on your turn. And remember, these aren't one-turn bonuses, so you're playing an extra card every turn. The rest of this video is not going to be directly about star pawns, more so me talking about how I want to do things differently compared to other TCGs. There's still some memes, but more serious. If you find this game concept interesting so far, subscribe. A more in-depth tutorial will be coming out in a few days. If you want other people to discover star pawns, YouTube likes interaction. That is, likes and comments. Also, those new hype points seem to be really impactful on a video's performance, but I'm not fully sure the requirements to be able to receive them. Part 4. my manifesto. No, I didn't become radicalized in the past few minutes. This is just a list of ideals I hope to follow. First, and arguably most important, scarcity is not a balancing technique, regardless of the method. While I will mostly be focusing on loot boxes and random packs, it doesn't matter how it's done. It will build an inherent class system into the game where you must spend more and more to get a better deck to perform better almost regardless of skill. It also just feels bad to know that you cannot get something by no fault of your own. Ideally, outside of misprints, signatures, special editions, and age, there should not really be a third-party market selling cards more expensive than me. But Jaden, that nagging voice returns, you can't control what people are going to do with their cards. How are you going to stop people from reselling cards that they own? And it's simple. Global mind-controlling 5G radiation satellites that communicate with the chip in the COVID vaccine. Whoa! Sorry, that joke was a little too 2021, even for me. But actually, just don't require loot boxes. If everything is available through me all the time, there is no rarity. If there is no rarity, there is nothing to mark up. If there is no markup, there are no scalpers literally weighing packs to find rare cards, which feels insane that things have come to that. Even when scalping isn't a concern, chance still makes things more expensive. Granted, these examples are extreme, but you get the point. Also, there is some chance that loot boxes get banned for under 13, 16, or 18s in the near future. Wouldn't mind getting ahead of that. Alright, I am going to present points 3 and 5 of my manifesto together. They make more sense in a video format together. To prevent a card from being inaccessible to the average person, cards should be rebalanced instead of banned. I'm sure that there are other examples, but I will give credit to Yu-Gi-Oh! They did this with Pot of Greed. They quickly realized that Draw 2 is too strong in their game and made new versions with additional drawbacks. Now, if you are coming from another TCG, you might think that it would get annoying if your cards may just get rebalanced someday, and you have to buy completely new copies. And you would be right in most TCGs. But think about what that would mean for star pawns in the context of point 1, no scarcity. You only paid something like 50 cents for the card in the first place. And now the new version is available in the same place for the same price. Worst case scenario, if a card in star pawns gets rebalanced or banned, and the old version is completely worthless, and you had 5 copies you need to replace, you're out at most $2.50. Assuming you can't do something like draw on an inner sleeve and update the card. Now you may think that this wouldn't work financially, but even in a capitalist sense, I think it works. I have 2 examples for you. Example 1, some hypothetical other TCG. A scalper buys a 10-card random booster pack for $10. That is plus $10 to the TCG company and whoever they have to pay, their artists, their vendors, whomever, and minus $10 to the scalper. The scalper opens the pack and they find a $50 card. The rest are hoarded, discarded, or sold at a loss, or whatever. They list and sell the card on a third-party website. Maybe the platform gets a $5 cut, maybe the scalper sells it for $45, that goes to them, and the actual player buying the card just paid $50 for the card. The TCG did not see anything from the second sale. They still only made that $10. Example 2, Star Pawns, based on real numbers by the way. A player buys 10 cards of their choice at an average of 50 cents per card. The online vendor charges $4 shipping. That is plus $5 to Star Pawns, plus $4 to the vendor, and minus $9 to the customer. That's it. No third party making money. Just you getting what you want, when you want, at a reasonable price. The distinction is that other TCGs don't see those higher prices on the third party sites anyway. Also, if it's so convenient to get cards new through the creator, I would expect more people to choose that option over third parties. On top of all of this, at least currently, it's basically just me. Almost no artists, no big box stores I need to pay, no paid advertising, YouTube videos are free. All of this keeps prices down. Point 4. All ideas are worth at least exploring. Well, not literally everything. Technically, there were a few things that I took one look at and decided against. Things that were by definition unbalanced, physically impractical, offensive, potentially illegal, or cards that require an additional part that is obnoxious to obtain or bring to a game. But basically everything else I'm willing to at least ponder. Maybe later it is found to be too complicated, too wordy, cause infinite loops, or something else. but I will at least think about it if proposed. Point 6. Infinite cards are not healthy and practically unbalanceable. Along with it being impossible to balance, it also becomes impossible to think about all the cards that may be in your opponent's deck and what might be good in your deck. My current target for the number of cards I'm aiming for is a few hundred. Enough that there's plenty of content for a newcomer, but small enough that it's possible to balance and a skilled player could have a general idea of what every card does. There may, one day, in the far future, where a last new card is released. Even after that, balance will need to keep happening for years later. No, I'm not running out of ideas already. This is just setting expectations. Point 7. Power creep is bad. Old cards should not be superseded by new cards. Pokemon has had this problem, but in Star Pawns, once again, this is mitigated to some extent by rebalancing. I have some control over how fast or slow a game is. No Yu-Gi-Oh! Lose in 2 turns type of games. Reverse power creep is kinda funny though. 8. I don't mind showing cards that are in consideration, as long as you remember that things in development may change. If I start receiving hate like what happened after Jeweled Lotus got banned, or whenever Minecraft changes anything in their pre-releases, I would be forced to stop publicly sharing ideas. Speaking of, I do have some ideas for a future beta set. Look. They are completely untested and I have no idea what they will look like a year from now. But I have thought of them and wrote them down. Point 9. No AI image generation will ever be printed on any card. I don't like the look, I don't like how the best generators were trained, it feels lazy, and it seems morally and legally dubious. I want to be the last thing to look at, change, and decide what happens before it goes public. Yes, I recognize some of the art is still quite ugly, I plan on changing some of the simpler or uglier art still, but AI is not the way. In a honestly great falling sand game called The Powder Toy, there's a saying you often see in the corner of creations. Better suck than steal. I think 15 years later, that's more relevant than ever for reasons the original writers could never have imagined. You have made it to the end of the video. Thank you for watching. If you have a friend that is fed up with the current state of trading card games, consider sharing them this video. Until next time.